Hello and welcome to this Telecoms.com webinar in association with Aptilo Networks called Building a Carrier-Class Wi-Fi Network with 3G Offloading. I'm Dawn Sahota, Senior Staff Writer at Telecoms.com, and today we will be learning from Nordic carrier TeliaSonera's 10 plus years of experience in building the largest carrier Wi-Fi network in the region, why it decided to pioneer SIM-authentication for the Wi-Fi network. We'll also discover the next steps to be taken with deployment of SIM-based roaming. So to help us do that, I'm joined by two experts who will explain this in more detail and take your questions at the end. They are Tora Bjorklund, Wireless Network System Specialist at TeliaSonera, and Torbjörn Ward, CEO at Aptilo Networks. Our speakers will be each making a presentation on this topic and will field your questions, which you can make at any point during the webinar at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to our first speaker, Torbjörn.
Thank you. My name is Torbjörn Ward. I'm the CEO of Aptilo Networks. And again, welcome to this webinar. I think it will be a very interesting webinar. Aptilo Networks is a company that is a software solution company working in the area of Wi-Fi and carrier-class Wi-Fi. This webinar, as you all well know, will be about building a carrier-class Wi-Fi network with 3G offloading. The agenda today is essentially there is a short introduction by myself, and I will introduce the company. We also have a very, very interesting session by Tora Bjorklund from TeliaSonera, and he will be telling you about a large and a great network that they have built during the last 10 or 12 years. It's going to be very interesting. And then the last session is that I will end with about 10 minutes or so talking about the Aptilo solution as well. And as you can see on this slide, there are three symbols, and that will be coming back throughout this presentation. And those are the three key pillars of the solution: a carrier-class Wi-Fi network itself, the SIM authentication methodologies, and then innovative integration with mobile core for policy and charging. So an overview for the Aptilo Networks. The company was founded in 2001. We're currently headquartered out of Stockholm in Sweden. We have offices in the US. And we have offices in Asia Pacific out of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. When we founded the company, we always wanted to build a solution, and we saw a need for a solution to manage large Wi-Fi networks that operators and carriers of sorts would be building. We were all coming from the mobile infrastructure and carrier side, and therefore saw the need for this kind of solution. We wanted to build a mobile network infrastructure like backend and structure. We saw a lot of products coming out to the market that were smaller Wi-Fi hotspot appliances like products, and this is something that we did not think was going to cut it for operators deploying larger networks. And so we ended up with this software solution that does exactly this: access and service control and billing control and policy management. And since then we've also added WiMAX, 3G and LTE support to our solution. The software itself has been deployed now with over 120 customers and in over 60 countries. And out of those 60 countries and 120 customers, there are more than 30 mobile operators that have deployed our solution with different kind of Wi-Fi and wireless networks. Apart from software licensing, we also have a strong option in managed services, which essentially extends pieces of managing the network itself, but predominantly is about offering a hosted service model of the Wi-Fi service management solution that I will be presenting a little bit later. The company itself has experienced a good profitable growth, and we have also acquired several competitors in this area. And therefore, we humbly consider ourselves the leader in this market of carrier-class Wi-Fi service management. The way that we have been able to deploy our solutions in this many countries is also about our delivery model. We partner up with many of the leading global players. We understand that customers want to see one solution offering from one company when they purchase and buy these things. So why do we actually have this webinar? Well, the key issue at stake here is really the 3G mobile data crunch. It's all about offloading traffic to Wi-Fi in one way or another, different drivers, and we were going to hear some of the drivers that TeliaSonera have seen. But common to most of these situations is essentially an explosive growth in the mobile data applications. There has been a good growth in the area of laptops and USB modems, of course, but it's really the proliferation of smartphones and the use of mobile data applications that have been driving this. There are questions around at this point in time about the justifiable capex for these kind of capacity expansions that are required in the 3G networks. And we see also that in the established markets, there's a really, really strong demand for faster mobile internet from the end users. At the same time as in the emerging markets, there's a very, very strong uptake in the adoption of wireless internet. So mobile operators that see some 5 times growth in different kind of smart devices, whether it's smartphones, tablets, etc., and the fact, and this has been fairly well seen in many different networks, that smartphones produce and consume somewhere around 30 times more traffic than normal phones, then 5 times 30 mathematically is 150 times higher traffic need, and that is the big issue at stake here, to handle that in the best way. There are a number of mobile operators that are not reaching any capacity limits at this time, but it's all about staying ahead of the curve. And what is an interesting aspect then is the fact that Wi-Fi can be a good alternative in certain traffic areas with a very high speed and a lower production cost. So we're also going to be at the Mobile World Congress. You're all welcome to come and meet us. If you would like to schedule a meeting, just send us a mail to the indicated email address here on this slide at events@Aptilo.com, and we'll be doing the best we can to cater for this.
Thank you, Torbjörn. So I'm responsible for the wireless network systems on TeliaSonera, and also with the development of that. I will cover the following topics here: the introduction to our wireless service, TeliaSonera and Home Run Wireless Zone, and give you a brief of the background of us, and of course the implementation of the SIM-authentication and those parts there, why we do this, and also some facts about it, how it works with the different network, 3G and Wi-Fi, and of course technical impacts and terminal readiness, are they or not, and then some conclusion and what's our strategy. TeliaSonera is the largest mobile and fixed line operator in the Nordic, and the Home Run Wireless Zone is also one of the largest Wi-Fi networks in the world. We have approximately 5,000 locations in the Nordic countries and the Baltics. And location is the ordinary ones: hotel, airport, institutions, corporations, restaurants, malls, and a lot of other public places. The architecture has from the beginning been a carrier grade architecture, and that's important to as an operator to be acting as a carrier grade service. Also, the bundle, both mobile and fixed line, can use the wireless zones. We are also providing credit card and SMS payment in our service here. And guest access to enterprises. We were one of the first to actually offer SIM-authentication and to make the Wi-Fi as a 3GPP network. And today we are most probably the largest SIM-enabled network in the world. Some of our background here. The history of Home Run started back in 1999, and we had a decision to launch the public Wi-Fi network. October 1999 was the first site put into operations, and from that the journey started. We had in the beginning flat rate subscriptions mainly for business travelers and those because it was quite expensive equipment. And initial focus was on the airports and of course after the airports the hotel was and conference and then it went on to different corporations, hospitals, restaurants and other places. As we started, we went for the carrier grade deployment. So that has been in our scope all the way. And high-end technology and vendors and that's important. Also the backhauling is quite important. And control of the usage. To maintain the capacity and that stuff, you have to do a control of the policy, and mainly we did that in the network edge to prevent the expensive capacity. When we started in 1999, we didn't have the take off as we expected. It was quite a high price to start. So in 2001, we actually discovered that we have to find some other way to give access to customer, and we start the scratch card. And that would be a tremendous success. We produced many millions of that. 2001, the first roaming agreement, we settled that. And now, back in 2004, we bundled it with the mobile data subscription, and we did the same with the fixed broadband back in 2007. Last year, we actually was able to launch the SIM-authentication, and of course, as some device was quite ready, and it gave us a huge uptake. And as you can see, especially iPhone and iPad was the target there. Some challenges to build a carrier class service. I have some of those here, not all, but the most important here. To keep up with the user and their behavior is the most problematic part, I think, since overnight they can change behavior and new device come in with some different behaviors and so on. And of course, to get all those places in a remote areas and to get them high capacity, because people using the Wi-Fi, they are moving around like wolf packs using the capacity, and normally they use quite high capacity since they are used to that by Wi-Fi. Maintain the quality of the service, because some of those using the service will of course have viruses and other stuff, and to be able to handle those behaviors, it's important because it's a shared network. Everyone who is using it has to share it in some way. And to be able to do that, you have to select a system that is capable of handling all those issues that can turn up in your network. So it's the scalability and flexibility it's really important in this sense. So when you start building it, it will be probably go faster and faster, and more sites want to join. And to put the rollout in the foresight here, you have to have an effective way of doing that. Some of our sites we are building with just to read in a Excel file to the network and then hit the go. So that's very important. And of course, when it comes to the network events, be able to see those events coming and also act on those, so you can prevent the network from being overloaded and so on. There's a lot of events going on in the network that you didn't even know that could happen. For example, the Windows update, it could sometimes produce a stunning 2,300 sessions from just one user, and that's a problem. The last point here is the site acquisition. That has to be that's an important part, because to handle the sites because they want to have some benefit on the network. And it's a symbiosis where you can produce capacity, you can sell capacity, and you can also serve the site itself. So it needs a dedicated organization. And of course, they need to select the right site. What site is the best site? Is it a gas station or is it a hotel? That's important. And also, every site owner has their own demands. So to get them to be comfortable with what you can produce. Why would we do SIM authentication in home run? Well, smartphones and those devices, they will love Wi-Fi better than the 3G. Of course, if you look at the round-trip delays in the 3G network and on the Wi-Fi, there's quite a big difference, and the user will, of course, notice that. And there's a lot of functionality designed only to use Wi-Fi. And of course, to do that, it's important to automate the connection. And it has to be instant, like the 3GPP normal authentication. You just, in some cases, you have a PIN code, or some cases you don't have, but it's just turning on and you are authenticated. You don't have to use any username or password that takes time to type in and to remember. And security is really important as well in the Wi-Fi. There's a problem handling keys and that in the Wi-Fi network. So in our case, we can have reuse the encryption keys on the SIM cards. And optimization here, of course, where you can actually use the networks that we have. For TeliaSonera behalf, we are using Wi-Fi 2G, 3G, and 4G as well. So, but we have to utilize all those networks to be able to provide all the bandwidth that our customer needs today. And of course, you look at new smartphones, and they're using, for example, new 4GS iPhone. It consumes 3 times more than its older one. So of course that's important. And of course we can do some savings here as well, since we are using the same identity IMSI, MSI DN, and also that will also handle the billing chain. The indoor coverage are easier to provide here in this case. So we can connect to our mobile network even if we are indoor, underground, for example, where it could be some tricky to get connections. So what have you learned since the launch here? When it comes to terminals, some of course are quite ready for SIM authentication, and there's of course a lot of terminals that's not ready yet. But we do have a network now, and in that case it's possible for them to develop those functionality. So someone has to start to build a network before you can have all terminals ready. And in the terminals we have seen that the automatic provisioning is important. For example, operator setting pushed out, that's very important. Of course, you can't as an operator push out updates because as many customers are right now, they are suspicious about SMS coming and telling you to answer yes or no on that. So what we saw that it was when we did the customer did the upgrade to for example OS 5, then they accepted the profile, and it was a huge increase. We can actually nearly see the hour when it started to boost up. So from that there's a huge uptake actually. And of course, when it comes to terminals that has to be configured manually, it has to be quite clear and simple to do that, because it's quite tricky anyway to understand what's happening. When Wi-Fi is using the SIM card, it's a completely new world for them. As it is when you do manual setup, it will take longer time to have impact on the user if you have to do that. And of course, some alternative methods for those devices that can't have a SIM card enabled. You do have to have that still, and in the foreseen future as well. This is showing a little bit of the chain that the user is traveling with the authentication. And as you can see here, the user is up here in the right corner, talks to the access point. We have about 25,000 access points, and they have to be configured with another SSID on a separate VLAN. And that's because of the security settings. The EP authentication will require radius functionality in the access point. As you can see here, the access point is connected to the access gateway, or the net access server, let's call it as well. And it acts as a radius proxy then, and forward all the messages through that. And it's also the aggregation point from all the APs, since we can't aggregate all those devices to one single point. And the next step down there, you can see it says service management, and Wi-Fi is actually the AAA layer. Here you can see we have 15 pieces of them. That, of course, is to build the redundant service and also cope with the amount of access requests coming in from the access point and the customer. Next step is to transfer this to the HLR actually, and to convert the radius message towards the HLR. We have the gateway, the SIM-authentication gateway. So it can also have diameter in it, so you can actually connect it to the 3GPP core and maintain other services as well, and also fetch data from that as well if you want to. Straightforward task with the Aptilo SIM authentication server here, and working great as it is. Well, here is two pictures showing a little bit of SIM authentication and also the handover here. Although this is a ping and it's not TCP, but however, you can see on the left picture here, you can see the round trip time. The RTT is 355. You can see in package 24 it's changing to 31, and that's where the traffic went over to the Wi-Fi, and also containing a 1x authentication, and then the traffic carry-ons there. And so it was going from edge to Wi-Fi here. The right page is also the opposite. From Wi-Fi, you can see the round trip time 52 milliseconds. When we change back to edge, you can see the round trip time 355 in the sequence number 20 there. So this is how it works today, and of course a lot of applications are like Spotify, YouTube, they are buffering and also handling a near similar handover. So will most probably work quite okay. If you look at the terminals and the readiness for SIM authentication, the top model as this here is actually the iPhone that has really good support for this. It actually supports this over the air, and since it pushed out the operator settings, adding this functionality. And also that could be why some 97% of the device mainly is using iPhone, iPad. However, it's using eSIM, and as you see here, BlackBerry, Nokia, and they are actually using eAPI, and that's a little bit more secure way of doing it, and as the 3GPP standardization actually want us to move forward to, but it still requires some manual configuration. Of course, we have tried some device here. We have separate software from some vendors, and here Samsung is one of those who actually can hand out support for that. of course, we have to ask vendors to actually add support for that. Microsoft Windows 7 supported with the drivers from Intel, and third-party Windows client, they are available to do this. And also Android clients also available. And of course, the conclusion here, we have so far, the Wi-Fi is a really good complement to 3G and 4G here. Mainly to 3G in the first step, but of course the 4G will come, since there isn't so many devices with the 4G and the Wi-Fi in it yet. We have a couple of those in the market, but the 3G device with the Wi-Fi on it is more out there. Indoor coverage is also problematic when it comes to mobile network to cover inside and so on. And of course, the Wi-Fi can in some time deliver higher bandwidth within the small areas. For example, if you have a football arena or similar to that, you have a huge amount of people coming in with the different smartphones and device, and giving us a hard time to cope with that with the 3G network and also the 2G network. Of course, you can do offload with this and so on, but of course you have to have a secure Wi-Fi service, because that's the way our customer expect us to produce. So no one can actually see what you are doing on the device. And of course, all those devices coming out now, they are addicted to Wi-Fi in some way. And of course, we need to follow the stream here. So our strategy here is, of course, to adopt and meet the increasing demand here for Wi-Fi at least, and all mobile data, of course. The conclusions from our launch here of SIM-authentication is that, well, it's extremely critical for doing offload. And of course, the launch generated a huge uptake of the Wi-Fi usage, and that's mainly because the SIM users, in some instances, they even do not know if they are connected or not. Wi-Fi is turned on the device, and they are, well, just walking by, and the device will connect, and of course disconnect when the user are leaving the area. But if you have a great network, the white holes in between there won't be so big, and that's a little bit why the experience to use this is quite excellent, since they're not aware if they're using 3G or Wi-Fi. The only thing they know is that, well, it's good coverage here, it's working great, and that's good for us. This is actually, we have been working with this in almost 8 years with the SIM authentication, and we have a platform that run the first tests and so on, but we found out that it didn't cope with the live network traffic when it reaches a couple of thousand users, and that's a little bit why we swapped the platforms and get a good system. Of course, this is a really good, successful launch with the SIM authentication. It's growing every day, and that's really good. So what we are going to carry on here with of course, we will increase the Wi-Fi footprints and perhaps mainly in dense areas. And of course, try to promote all the terminals so they will support SIM authentication. And in that area, of course, the roaming is the next one. We have done trials with the roaming, of course, and it's quite simple to obtain and maintain, so that's important. On the development side, we are evaluating the new Hotspot 2.0, and that is mainly building on the 11U standard, just ratified not so long ago. So it's quite new, but that will support a lot of functionality when you're doing roaming. You don't have to add the profiles for roaming partner network and so on. You can actually, in the beam, send out the roaming capabilities of the network. And of course, the next part will be to integrate the core for the Wi-Fi and the 3GPP core. So We can have some common policies and quota management in the network, so we can have a similar 3G, 4G, 2G service as the Wi-Fi. When it comes to APN and corporate APN, we will also evaluate the concept of that, as if we can add that as well. In that case, all the mobile networks can utilize the Wi-Fi as well. Thank you for listening to my presentation here, and now I will hand over to Torbjörn from Aptilo.
Thank you, Tor. That's a really, really interesting story, and I'm sure everybody is very satisfied with hearing the whole history, the challenges, and the solutions that you have found for your very, very large network. At this point in time, I'm going to spend some 10 minutes just talking a little bit about Aptilo and the solution that we have and what we're providing. And we feel that we know carrier class Wi-Fi. We have been deployed, as I indicated before, with over 120 service providers in 60 countries, and among those 30 mobile operator Wi-Fi deployments. We have capabilities to handle a multitude of Wi-Fi business models and payment options. And the great thing about Wi-Fi is that it caters for and enables so many different ways for how to deploy this. We have done many large-scale carrier Wi-Fi deployments. You heard TeliaSonera, of course, is one of them with their 25,000 access points or so, and there's a number of other networks out there being built or have been built of similar or approaching the same size. And there's a number of deployments both in the Americas, in North and South America, in Europe, Africa, and Asia Pacific. Along with this, there's also a vast experience with what we call verticals, or essentially the business verticals that the operators can offer to their B2B, business-to-business offerings. Not only is it about building a Wi-Fi network, but also about teaming up with different kind of hospitality, healthcare, municipalities, airport enterprises, and so on. And therefore, we have built those kind of features into the solution. And the fact that we have been around for 10 years at this point in time, very demanding customers. We built a lot of different requirements into the product, so it becomes a modular solution. So the Aptilo Mobile Data Offloading Solution, there's 3 pillars of this. The first one is the carrier class Wi-Fi, and to manage this there is a need for a service management platform. The second piece is SIM-authentication in order to enable a completely seamless end-user experience and with the full security similar to 3G connectivity. And for that, there is a SIM-authentication server. And the last piece is innovative integration with mobile core and OSS BSS for different kind of policy and charging. And for that, there is a policy service integration to the product offering. And to put this into context, we have the overview on this slide for mobile data offloading to Wi-Fi. On this slide, we have at the bottom left-hand corner the 3G network, the base stations, and they're all leading traffic into the mobile core, consisting of different kind of gateways such as GGSN, there's deep packet inspection gateways, there's PCRF or policy controllers, there's the OSS, BSS, and HLR for the home location register. On the right-hand side, we have the Wi-Fi networks, and they, in one way or another, of course, consist of the Wi-Fi access points. There's a need for an access controller, of which Aptilo offers such controller to the market, but there's also a number of other players on the market which we interact with. And then there are the different kind of Wi-Fi networks. Of course, the operators own Wi-Fi networks. There's also many different hotel or retail chains that are building Wi-Fi networks. There are wireless ISPs that are different cable DSL operator Wi-Fi networks, and of course also international Wi-Fi roaming. And to tie all these things together, we are offering the Aptilo Mobile Offloading Solution. These are the pieces and the 3 pillars that I previously talked about and how that fits into this picture. We have the first pillar, which is the carrier class Wi-Fi on the right-hand side, and for the integration and connectivity into the mobile core. There are SIM authentication and the policy and charging. And I will be addressing each one of these three aspects. So the carrier class Wi-Fi piece is the aspect that is looking at and interconnecting with the different Wi-Fi networks. This is the area and the servers that are installed in a central location in a data center where all the services are defined for Wi-Fi. This is where the management of the Wi-Fi services are all handled. And it will handle a multitude of different login methods that are web-based, that are client-based methods, that are automatic, semi-automatic, and manual methods. There are both prepaid and postpaid capabilities built into the solution with quota management and remember the allowances and things like that. This is a solution that has been deployed and certified with all the widely available Wi-Fi vendors. There's a tendency sometimes to think that since Wi-Fi after the access point is pure IP connectivity, everything should be simple, but implementing the different end user scenarios and use cases and interactions with different nodes does have a number of interoperability aspects that we have been able to overcome, and how we integrate with the different access controllers of the access point vendors, or with the Aptilo controller, or also the different kind of standalone gateway controllers and vendors that are out there. So that's managing and handling the operator's own Wi-Fi network. On top of that, in order for the different partner networks to work in a good way, and there are some operators that see partner networks as a really important piece to accomplish the footprint, there is also a need to manage those kind of roaming relationships. So a user showing up in one of those networks will get authenticated and will get set back into the mobile offloading solution, and will be looking at what it allows for the user in those networks and send that back. And then the data and the accounting data is being sent back into this solution, which means we'll also be doing the roaming, etc. I indicated before also vertical business offerings to hospitality, how that will fit into an enterprise environment, etc. And these features are also provided in this solution. And at the end of the day, you need to know how much is being used in the network and what is happening, and therefore statistics and reporting is a very key aspect. The second piece to this is the SIM authentication, and this is the piece that will take the Wi-Fi authentication, what is happening over the Wi-Fi network, and in this case it provides a completely seamless end user scenario, and we're completely able to leverage the identity security of the SIM card and translate that and do the connectivity into the HLR for a full SIM authentication. Not only do we authenticate the user, but of course we also need to calculate the number of keys that are being used for the access points to do the encryption of the Wi-Fi link. And this is a very important aspect of using the standard called 802.1x. This means that the connectivity will be fully encrypted, and we're providing the keys and rolling keys, etc., and sending that down into the Wi-Fi network. Another network architecture aspect is the fact that there are a number of HLRs that have upgrade capabilities to take SIM authentications into the HLR, but we have to remember that this means that all the thousands of nodes, and we heard Tori talking about Telia in this case that have 25,000 access points. When it comes to the technical details about this, each one of these access points is actually a radius authentication client, which means that the links has to be fine, and therefore the Aptilo Mobile Offloading Solution with the SIM authentication server creates an aggregation of all those thousands of authentication links into one single link that will go into the HLR itself. In order to fit into the different kind of networks requirements and scenarios that are out there, we provide flexibility with SS7, SIGTRAN, diameter, etc. And we can, of course, also connect to multiple HLR nodes. The last piece to this is the policy and charging integration. After the user has been authenticated, for instance, by a SIM card or through other means, there is a need to do a lookup and a validation of what kind of Wi-Fi services should this individual be entitled to. Usually those are deployed in various different areas in the operator's backend. There are aspects about whether a user has prepaid or postpaid, and then in another area there is a definition of what kind of speed or what kind of priority or what kind of service this should be provided. So what we do is that we do multiple policy lookups in the different nodes in the backend, and by doing this we can have common policies with the 3G network altogether. There could be also some additional unique Wi-Fi policies, and that can be added separately with no problems. And after the usage has been handled, if the built-in prepaid and postpaid charging and billing is not used in the Wi-Fi service management itself, and instead want to integrate with the 3G prepaid system or billing, that is of course something that's provided in here as well. And for devices that do not support SIM authentication, we shouldn't forget about other methodologies such as even SMS and using one-time passwords as a good way to identify the user itself and make that a username password. And then that in itself can be combined with automatic remembering the identity and MAC address of the user itself and the device. So to summarize the entire offloading area, and after having had the opportunity of providing these kind of solutions and experiences from both TeliaSonera and ourselves here, I would like to say that there is a truly a great opportunity for service providers at this point. This is happening now. We have Wi-Fi footprint that is being built will strongly build a loyalty from end users. This has been proven. We have seen numerous cases where operators have built Wi-Fi, and we can hear when we speak to end users, well, of course I use this or that operator because with that I can use Wi-Fi and it doesn't cost me much, or it's something that I can use and readily available and it's really easy to use. There's also really a strong business case to look at for offloading. Of course, the starting point and the assumptions are different for different operators, but there is a very strong business case to alleviate the high traffic areas from some of this capacity. And we shouldn't forget about the fact that 3G is a tremendous fallback option if you implement the solution right, so it's an automatic login, automatic user experience, then you can seamlessly go between those. So to be able to go into the 3G areas and then enhance that by going into Wi-Fi. It's also here now. It's really ready and it is happening. There's an enormous amount of Wi-Fi devices that are capable of doing this, and there are many more to come. Not all devices are capable of the SIM authentication methods that we've been telling you about, but there are many different pragmatic approaches to making different kind of devices automatic or semi-automatic login and authentication into the network. We are involved in numerous Wi-Fi projects among many operators today, so this is really the time to build footprint and provide this to the end users. Building the network and creating the services has to be done in a wise way. We're not suggesting people would not doing wisely, but there are quite a few things that needs to be thought of. One of the absolutely most important things that we see in the lessons learned that we've seen and heard is the aim for an automatic or seamless user experience. If you do that, this is a truly important aspect to enable more users, not only the users that are early adopters, but also all the users that have devices that can do Wi-Fi. The second most important thing is to adopt a very simple and an easy to understand business model. People don't generally like to complicate things. They would like it to be easily understood, and that's one of the best advices that we can give as well. When it comes to the Wi-Fi network itself, it needs to be deployed in a way that it really can last. We need to use high-quality Wi-Fi infrastructure, and not to forget good backhaul bandwidth all the way back to the Wi-Fi access points, which means that it can really provide a high-speed environment. And at the end, also remember to choose an offloading solution carefully. You need to have a future-proof solution that can cater for your own subscribers with the services that you have, but you also need to cater for any visitors, roamers, temporary users, etc. And there is a number of things happening on the market when it comes to devices, and that will also mean that there will be new use cases. So it has to be a very flexible solution that can cater for those things. And as an operator, you need to integrate well with the existing core, the existing back-end, and therefore you need to have the hooks and the ways to handle that. So we're coming to the end of this. We would like to open up for Q&A. Thank you very much for listening so far, and we're hoping that there will be many interesting questions from you all in the audience as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys, and thank you to our audience for viewing. We will now open up the floor for our experts to take your questions.